Hello again, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather in this 4th day of October 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. Up first, we've got a flood advisory now. The watch is no longer in effect for the Kenai River, now a flood advisory, and that's for the Kenai River from Ski Lac Lake to Sterling, and that's that flood advisory is out until 1:45 p.m. Tuesday afternoon. And that's due to the recent heavy rain over the last week. And so minor flooding is possible or has occurred along that stretch of the river and expected to do so until Tuesday afternoon, which time they'll either cancel it or, they'll kick it out longer. And from there are no other watches, warnings, or advisories out public-wise for the remainder of the state. Looking really good over the interior all the way to the Arctic coast, Bering Sea Aleutians. No warnings there, and the Panhandle as well. But today we got a pretty good system pulling into the Gulf of Alaska, and gale and minimum storm force winds along the front there up along the North Gulf Coast with gusts 50 to 60 miles an hour out of the east and northeast, with increasing rain and wind this afternoon. Mostly over the northern Panhandle. Amounts ranged from, I'll say, half an inch at Juneau, and Yakutat had 2/3 of an inch of precipitation. And down the coast, though, lighter amounts, say Ketchikan just 1/10 of an inch. And winds Cape Decision gusting up to 50 miles an hour at mid-afternoon today. Latoya Bay, 40 miles an hour out of the south and southeast. And Middleton Island gusts to 52 miles an hour at the same time. And Valdez had about half an inch of rain today, as did Kodiak. And Kodiak winds swung around on the backside of the low. They're west-northwest, gusting as high as 32 miles an hour or so. And so that's going to start drying conditions out there, and ending the precipitation, thinning out the clouds, should lead to some clearing later on. Otherwise, out in the Bering Sea, northerly flow or northwest flow coming down from the north. And that has surges of moisture in with it, bringing looks like some rain and fog into the Pribilofs and down into the Fox Islands as well. And that's going to continue for the next few days with higher pressure back out to the west. Whole pattern shifting eastward, so that area of gusty winds will shift eastward with it, with the high eventually building into the western interior. Ahead of the next big storm, you can just see the edge of the Cirrus Shield there coming onto the chart. To the west of Shimia, and then up across Kamchatka Peninsula, and that'll be bearing down on the Aleutians later on. Otherwise, on the chart today, just high pressure out that way, kind of a flat ridging condition there, and then between the ridging up into the Russian Far East and then the lower trough there along the west coast, northerly flow pulling moisture down with it in the form of mostly rain, fog, and drizzle of the light variety into the Pribilof, southward into the eastern and east central Aleutians, some scattered showers along the Alaska Peninsula, and that low center pulling up into the western Gulf there and pushing the front and tightening the gradient up along the North Gulf Coast with gale and storm force winds. And winds on the increase along the southeast coast, I mentioned already, gusting to 52 miles an hour Cape Decision with increasing rain. Again, heaviest in the north there, and you'll get some more in the south once the system pulls through, but the heaviest amounts will probably be along the north coast and then over the northern Panhandle. Otherwise, a pretty dry day. Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, up into the Susitna Valley with some clearing, as well as the central interior, not bad. Temperatures still pushing up near 60 degrees there at Chalk-Yitzhak this afternoon, upper Yukon Valley areas. Otherwise, most areas in the upper 40s to mid-50s, and some mixed precipitation going on in the Brooks Range, scattered and light, and also back to the northwest near that main low center. But winds not bad at all over the interior, pretty light for the most part. Same thing for the Arctic coast. And for tonight, that front pushes right onto the coast and begins to weaken. Winds will become more southwesterly, and then eventually west-southwest. and will diminish, but a good shot of rain as that comes in and some wind tonight and the North Gulf Coast. This evening starting to taper off. It dries out over Kodiak Island. Probably will start seeing some clearing as well as the low center pulls off to the northeast there up to Middleton Island. And so the North Gulf Coast will see those winds really drop off and that low center gets up there and the gradient just about disappears. And over the Copper River Basin, some moisture circulating up from the east and southeast will bring a chance of rain and showers across the central and eastern Copper and southern Copper River Basin. And some of that might sneak into the north side of the eastern Alaska Range there at Tok, Northway, possibly Delta Junction. Could see a few showers or light precipitation. Should stay south of Eagle, though, and it'll be dry over the interior once again, all the way down to Bristol Bay, where there's just a risk of an isolated remaining lingering shower. And out over the Bering Sea, north to south flow there with a mixed precipitation, Bering Strait, maybe to St. Lawrence Island, mostly liquid form, of course, and winds maybe gusting 30, 35 miles an hour. Nunivak Island, across the Pribilofs, down to the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Higher pressure back out to the west, so light winds with that pattern. And the next front, quite a gradient with. You can see the low center still off the chart, but the rain starting to push into Shemya late tomorrow, as well as the increase in the winds. And high pressure starting to shift eastward in the Bering Sea, and probably the showers will end, say, for the Pribilofs by Monday evening. And but through Monday, it stays rather unsettled and damp, not so much change, but you'll see a definite decrease in the winds. Alaska Peninsula, breezy with light rain, fog, drizzle, showers farther up the peninsula there to the Aleutian Range. Bristol Bay, basically dry. And for the Kodiak Island area, just a risk of a shower, otherwise probably staying partly sunny there. That'd be right over the island, not really too significant on the precipitation there. And for the Cook Inlet area, partial clearing and dry, just some lingering isolated showers along the Alaska Range. And that front, the original one that pushes up tomorrow, moves eastward and weakens, and those troughs kind of develop into another front there. You can see the troughs back out to the southwest here, looking at tonight's again. And I think I got my days missed. Anyway, tomorrow that front lingers, kind of hangs up, develops, a weaker one develops and hangs up along the coast, but I'll keep it wet, occasional rain, good southwest flow both at the surface and aloft, definitely wet weather pattern continuing for the North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle as well for the next few days. Otherwise, up over the interior, partly and mostly sunny tomorrow, and chance of snow, light snow flurries maybe, or mixed precipitation depending on the time of day and elevation. Of course, in the Brooks Range, that would fall as snow, whatever it does. And chance of showers over the Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, basically dry over the western interior. Could see some clearing even in the Kuskokwim Valley, but showers lingering along the southwest coast. And for the day on Tuesday, big storm way out there over the northwest Bering Sea, about 968 millibars for the low center. And the front bringing gale and storm force winds, mostly possibly gales for the Aleutians, and storm force winds to the west of the Pribilofs and sort of to the west of the St. Matthew Island area. They're kind of right on the edge by Tuesday afternoon. Otherwise, that storm shoves that ridge of high pressure inland, and it makes for a pretty dry day with some afternoon clearing there over the southwest interior and Bristol Bay, as well as Kodiak Island. Otherwise, Cook Inlet, partly sunny. Optimistically, some lingering isolated showers along the Alaska Range and isolated widely scattered showers over the Copper River Basin. And then a weak trough up over the central interior, kind of wedged between the two high centers. Mostly cloudy, occasional light rain or snow showers there, and snow showers back up to the northeast there. North of Eagle and the eastern Brooks Range is getting grazed, otherwise high pressure for the Arctic coast, dry and light wind conditions there, as well as much interior Alaska not looking at much wind, and a definite lack of gradient results in light wind conditions for the North Gulf Coast as well as the Panhandle, where high pressure trying to build in over the southern areas really tries to dry it out, but not quite good enough. Well, actually, it could result in some clearing down over the southern areas. It'll probably be a dry afternoon there, but the precipitation will continue to fall up in the north with the remnants of that trough. And looking at the low temperatures for tonight, not too bad. Upper 40s, lower 50s for the Panhandle, mid-30s Copper River Basin, 30 to 35 over the eastern interior, warming to upper 30s in the west. And then back down to the lower to mid-30s there with the northerly flow, St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, and a shade near or below freezing for the Arctic coast, upper 20s, north slope in the Brooks Range, lower 40s for the Aleutians and Pribilofs. And highs for Monday afternoon. 55 to 62 for the southeast coast, warmest in the southern areas there. Upper 40s, lower 50s, Copper River Basin, lower to mid 50s, South Central Alaska, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, and 45 to 50 or 51 or so up there in the Tanana Valley, and upper 30s Brooks Range, and near freezing or 30 to 35 for the North Slope, and then mid 30s for the Arctic coast, near 40 there for the Bering Strait, mid 40s for the Aleutians, or mid 40s for the Pribilofs, near 50 for Adak actually, as well as part of the Alaska Peninsula. And that'll be followed by lows Tuesday morning, back down into the mid 20s there for the Brooks Range, North Slope, upper 20s for the Arctic coast, and near freezing for the Seward Peninsula. Tanana Valley, Central Interior, 30 to 35 for the lows, and mid 30s for the Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin, upper 30s to lower 40s, Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, mid 40s for the Panhandle, and then the highs Tuesday afternoon, lower 30s right along the Arctic coast, probably staying in the 20s for the North Slope and part of the Brooks Range, but mid to upper 40s over the Central Interior, lower 50s, South Central Alaska, and the Panhandle as well.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, we've got big swath of IFR from the Arctic Ocean across the North Slope Brooks Range, all of the western interior, Kuskokwim Valley, also covering the western Alaska Range, and then becomes marginal VFR, western Cook Inlet, but VFR there for the southern Matanuska Valley, or the southern Susitna Valley, most of the Matanuska Valley, and on down to the Barren Islands and northern part of Kodiak Island. Otherwise, IFR there along the southwest coast, Bristol Bay, marginal for the Alaska Peninsula. And we'll go with St. George in marginal VFR, St. Paul VFR, St. Lawrence Island marginal, and some more IFR with the next system way out there just west of Chimianatu, marginal for the Panhandle, IFR Yakutat to about Cape St. Elias, and some IFR also there, northern Copper River Basin, but staying south of Eagle. And for the afternoon, area VFR there for the eastern upper Yukon Valley on down across the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, eastern Alaska Range into the central Copper River Basin with IFR just to the south there, southern Copper River Basin to the North Gulf Coast. VFR for the Panhandle in the afternoon, stays VFR Cook Inlet and the valleys, as well as out there in the Bering Sea, a swath from St. Lawrence Island, Pribilofs, VFR. And IFR, though, for Adak, marginal for Atka, marginal VFR, Fox Islands, and the western central interior, marginal VFR to IFR, and all the way up to the North Slope and Arctic coast. Not much change up that way on Tuesday morning. Still IFR for the central, eastern, North Slope, Arctic coast of the Brooks Range. And from the central interior, some IFR right down across the northern two-thirds of the Kuskokwim Valley up to westward to about the mountains there, and along the Alaska Range down across Iliamna Lake into the Aleutian Range, and then for the Bristol Bay area, Bristol Bay, marginal VFR, Alaska Peninsula, marginal, VFR Kodiak Island, VFR in the Panhandle, some marginal VFR northern up toward Haines to Skagway, Klondike Highway, IFR Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, and the band of IFR pushing eastward across the Aleutians. Kind of splits into three separate zones on Tuesday afternoon. One near Atka up to just west of the Pribilofs, another one trailing back across Chitka and Kiska, and then the third one there west of Chimianatu. Otherwise, the west coast now in eastern Bering Sea, pretty good VFR flying conditions for the afternoon Tuesday. And marginal VFR Kenai Peninsula and much of the central eastern interior into the northern Panhandle. And some IFR there, eastern Alaska Range, up to possibly as far north as Eagle there, right along near the Yukon River, and then kind of westward, but not too widespread. But the marginal VFR is pretty widespread from the Arctic coast there, southward to the Gulf of Alaska. And for Anaktuvik, IFR, same forecast for Adigan, IFR for the pass, Lake Clark and Merrill. IFR, probably best chance, lowest conditions on the western entrances. And for rainy, IFR west side, better east, and occasionally marginal for windy tomorrow. And for Isabel, occasional marginal VFR. And for Tanita, we'll go marginal VFR, southern entrance, otherwise VFR. And for, Tanita, marginal VFR. And then for Portage, IFR becoming marginal. And for Chilkoot and White, we got marginal VFR becoming VFR. And for the freezing levels, out west across the Aleutians, something of a gradient there, 2 to 8,000 feet. and then 2,000 feet near the Pribilos, 4,000 feet well south of the eastern Aleutians Alaska Peninsula, and kind of up across the eastern southeast interior into the northern panhandle about 4,000 feet, and then 6 to 12,000 feet from the Mount Edgecombe area all the way down to the Queen Charlotte's. And icing, occasional moderate rime there on the North Gulf Coast. Otherwise, that chances become less significant as you head down the panhandle there. And some lingering mixed icing, just a slight chance there along the Alaska Peninsula in the southwest interior, as well as the North Slope and the Brooks Range, and then the big batch out there to the west with the next system pushing eastward. And for the jet stream, good southwest flow. Wet weather pattern continues into the panhandle there. It continues for the panhandle, and then the rest of the states on the cold side of the jet. And for 9,000 feet, we've got pretty strong winds even at this elevation, 50 to 70 knots, strongest there across Dixon Entrance. And for 3,000 feet, 40 to 55 knot winds, pretty good swath. But now northerlies there along the western interior, eastern Bering Sea at 40 knots. And for turbulence, that'll result in some areas of light to isolated moderate chop, northwest coast, Seward Peninsula, Alaska Peninsula, moderate chop, diminishing from south to north over the panhandle throughout the day.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's a dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the Northern Lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the Northern Lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling, you know. It's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business, but if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside of you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get one hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you're gonna preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, oh, you're elevated, levitating, you are lifted up. Your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was, or how fortunate. Of course, I just spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything, so you got to remember that luck is kind of a relative term, but I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. That feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the sea ice analysis, not much different from last couple of days there. Still off the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, a fair distance, and even a bigger distance off to the west there. Not a lot of big changes expected over the next 4 or 5 days. And from there, coastal water forecasts on the south coast, westerlies 20 to 25 knots with seas 13 to 14 feet. Increasing as you head north there, southwest 30 to as high as 35 knots up toward Yakutat, seas approaching 20 feet. And for Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, southerlies 25 knots, small craft advisories, seas 5 feet, south 20 for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, southwest at 15 with 6-foot seas. And then for Tuesday, southeast winds at 15 knots for Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, southeast 10 for Stevens Passage, southerlies at 10 knots, or at 5 knots, real light winds there. For the Clarence Strait area, actually all the southern inside waters, pretty light, probably variable wind directions with slight seas on Tuesday afternoon. And out along the coast, light winds also south 10 knots, seas 8 to 9 feet. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, northwest breeze at 10 knots, seas 2 feet. West winds 10 knots for Cook Inlet with seas to 3 feet. Small craft advisories, though, pretty brisk winds, Kamishak Bay, Barren Islands, and the North Gulf Coast, all 30 knots with 10 to 12-foot seas. And then for Tuesday, Cook Inlet, northerlies, 10 knots, east 15 for Prince William Sound. And then around the Middleton Island zone there on the eastern North Gulf Coast, southeast 15 knots, lighter southerlies at 10 knots to the west, and the Barren Islands northwest at 20. And for Kodiak Island, for tomorrow, west winds 25 knots on the east side, Shelikof Strait 20 knots, and 20-knot winds from Sitkinak to Castle Cape. And the Alaska Peninsula, small craft advisories, northwest 25 knots blows across the peninsula with 8 to 9-foot seas, and Bristol Bay west of 15. Those will pick up to 25 knots for Bristol Bay on Tuesday. And brisk west wind continues across the Alaska Peninsula, about 25 to 30 knots with 8 to 9-foot seas, and small craft advisories, Sitkinak to Castle Cape, northwest 25, and then Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, northwest winds 20 knots, seas 4 to 7 feet. And moving to the Fox Islands tomorrow, small craft advisories, higher pressure building over the central Aleutians. So you got northwest winds at 25 knots with seas running 8 to 9 feet. And then northwest 20 or so, or west northwest 20 for the central Aleutians, Adak and Atka. And then turning southwest on the other side of the ridge axis there at 20 knots. And then with that system beginning to bear down on the eastern Aleutians, those winds in the afternoon come up to 30 knots from the south, and seas will build back to 9 feet. Storm warnings on Tuesday for the western Aleutians, Shimi and Attu to about Kiska, southwest 50 knots, 23-foot seas, 45 knot winds there for Amchitka, Adak and Atka, south winds, full gales, 40 to 45 knots, 15 to 20-foot seas, and gales coming into Unmak Island at 40 knots, and Unalaska Island, south to southwest, 30 to 35 knots. And for the southwest coast tomorrow, northwest small craft advisory level winds there, north at 25 to 30 knots, 8 to 9 foot seas, northwest 20 for the Pribilofs, northwest 25 St. Matthew Island, as well as 25 knot winds from the north, Norton Sound, and 30 knots for St. Lawrence Island. They'll swing around to the south at 30 knots for St. Lawrence Island, but stay northerly there for Norton Sound. Then we've got gales into the southwest coast, especially in the afternoon, coming up to southeast, 35 knots, seas building 11 to 13 feet. 45 knot southeast winds for the St. Matthew Island area, also south 35 for the Pribilof Islands. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, north to northwest 10 to 15 tomorrow, north 15 on the central coast, 20 knots on the west side, and then small craft advisories, northerlies 25 to 30 knots from Cape Beaufort to Wales. And for Tuesday, variable 15 from Wales to Cape Beaufort, and then south 10 on the western coast, north 15 on the central coast, and north to northwest 20 knots, eastern Beaufort Sea coast. For tonight, that system brings a really good shot of rain and to a lesser extent wind into the panhandle tonight, as wind really drops off along the North Gulf Coast, but rain will continue but slowly taper off. It dries out for Kodiak. And for tomorrow, another front develops out to the west as the original one pushes off into Canada and dissipates. So winds won't be as strong. Rain will be lighter, but it'll continue through most of the day and dries out over south central Alaska with some clearing. Stays dry over the interior, chance of snow on the north slope. And then for Tuesday, another bigger storm comes into the Bering Sea and the Aleutians with gale and storm force winds.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.